There's no actual evidence or proof that anyone has actually
You're listening to Parasearch UK Radio. News, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch UK Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised.
You're listening to The Spirit Dimension with your host, Kerry Greenaway, right here on Parasearch Radio.
Good evening and welcome. I am Kerry Greenaway. I am your host of The Spirit Dimension, and tonight I'm just a little bit very, very excited as I'm joined in the studio by the Godfather of the Crystal Kingdom, and that is Mr. Philip Permutt. Good evening, Philip. How are you?
Hi, Kerry. I'm fine, thank you.
I'm very starstruck. I'm not going to lie.
It's lovely, but you don't have to be.
I know, we were talking before the show and you've put me very much at my ease, as always you do this. Now, I have so many questions that I want to ask you. But first of all, let's begin by your journey. I want to know where you started with crystals, because it always fascinates me how people start in the crystal world. So where did you very first start?
My crystal journey, I suppose actually when I was a kid, it's being on the beach, picking up pebbles and stones, and always preferring the pebbly beaches to the sandy ones. Those sorts of things. My father was really into sort of psychic research, and actually photographing the spirit world was his big thing. And we did a whole load of stuff at Stonehenge once. And he just was always into anything alternative. I never needed alternative therapies. I was just a healthy kid, basically. And then one day, stuff started to go wrong. And I had something called Crohn's disease, which is basically where the gut swells in and blocks itself. And I had an operation, and it went slightly wrong. And after the operation, the doctor said to me, the operation was a great success, but sorry, you can't walk. And what had happened was my sciatic nerve in the right leg had actually sort of around the gut stuck to it, and they couldn't separate the two. So they ended up severing the right leg, severing the nerve to the right leg. And that was when I really got into alternative therapies. Not just crystal healing, but everything. Just about anything that you've ever heard of I tried, and a whole load of other stuff that probably most people have never heard of. And I'm sure many of the things actually helped. But crystals was the one thing that I really, really got drawn to. And I noticed that they were working, that they were really working in a very strange moment when I was still in hospital. And I had on one side of me a drip going into my arm, which was on a sort of wheelie thing that you could wheel about. And the other side of me, there was this massive thing of pre-digested food being pumped into my heart. I always actually wondered who digested the food. But anyway, that was something that we won't worry about too much. And I managed somehow to get these two wheelie things and get up and get moving. Because in those days, a long, long time ago, I smoked. And I managed to get myself to the one place in the hospital, because in those days you could still smoke in hospital as well. So we're going back quite a while, where you were allowed to smoke by the window. And I was standing there holding on to these two things, having a cigarette, and a nurse came along, and she said, "What are you doing here?" in that sort of strict nursing voice. And I thought, oh, here we go. She's going to give me a lecture about smoking. And she said, "Get back to bed, you can't walk."
Oh.
And I realised, of course, that I had actually just walked with the aid of these wheelie things, 20 yards or whatever it was. And for someone who couldn't walk at all, it was sort of a life-changing moment. And 6 weeks and 4 days after I was told that I wouldn't walk, I walked out of the hospital without any wheelie things or sticks or anything else, and then just got completely immersed in crystals in particular. And the reason for crystals was because they're a physical thing. And all of the energy stuff is fantastic. The sort of Reiki, spiritual healing, hands-on healing, Taoist healing, everything like that. But you can't see it. And in another lifetime, many years ago, I did a science degree, a biology degree. So the idea of having something physical that you can actually hold and touch really suited my background very much. And crystals are beautiful, and I started working with them, spent a year working with them with me. And in those days, I'm going back a little while here, there was really very, very few people in the country doing it at all. I think about half a dozen.
Mm-hmm.
There was no one to learn with. It was, try it. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, do something else next time. And after working on myself for about a year, then I started working with clients with exactly the same approach. Let's see if this works. And just got better and better and better results. And the rest, as they say, is sort of history. That's where it all comes from.
I always find it so interesting talking to people when they start working with crystals, because every journey is so personal, a lot more personal than, we spoke about before, I work in the paranormal field very heavily with crystals in that way. So I approach crystals from a very different point of view. And every time I meet a crystal person, their journey is so much more very, very personal and has affected them incredibly different, rather than I had an experience and that led me down that road. And you've just demonstrated that completely. They come into your life in a way that's so profound generally that it makes it so soul touching.
Yes, you don't ask for it, they just appear. And then they sort of take over, really. The more you work with crystals, the more time you spend with them. And the more time you spend with them, the more you understand what they're saying to you.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like, I try to explain to my classes, that it's a little bit like learning a new skill. And years ago, when computers first sort of came out in sort of the main public world, most people had no idea how to work them at all, and we had to learn new keyboard skills, we had to learn mouse skills. Nowadays you have to learn touchscreen skills to operate them, and working with crystals is exactly the same. You just need to learn some new keyboard skills, some new mouse skills, touchscreen skills, and you can access the information they've got. Mm-hmm. And when you listen to them, they tell you what to do, and they're always right.
Oh, incredibly. Even this is one example I use, is you can walk into a room full of amethyst, and one piece of amethyst will be the one that you're drawn to. That'll be the one that works with your energy in a very unique way, a very specific way.
Yes, it's absolutely true. Each crystal is individual. They're like people. You walk into a room, there are some people you want to talk to, there are others you don't want to talk to, and crystals are exactly the same. Yes.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree with you. Now, I read in one of your books, now, the very, very first book I bought from you, that you wrote, rather, not from you, but that you wrote, was Sacred Stones and Crystals. And this you wrote with Lyn Palmer.
Yep.
And it goes into actually how to use stones and crystals more than it does individual crystal meanings. And that was sort of, at the time, that's what I wanted, the different ways you could use crystals. That this was right at the beginning of my actual journey, and that taught me so much.
That's wonderful. Thank you for saying that. It is a very different book. Most books about crystals, including some of mine, are, this crystal does this, this is what you do with crystals, this is how it works. Sacred Stones and Crystals really looked at it differently, because it looked at our own crystals and what we do with them, and it looked at 4 key places in the world that are really energy power spots. So we picked on Avebury in Wiltshire, the Côte de Megaliths in Brittany and France, the Sonoran Desert in Arizona, and Uluru in Australia, which used to be Ayers Rock.
Yes.
And those 4 power spots and things that you can actually do there to connect with the energy. Mm-hmm. And they're based on those places, but the exercises which are in the book you can do at any sacred site at all.
And it taught me so much about, just different ways you can use on a day-to-day basis as well. So without actually having to go to these particular sites on a day-to-day basis, the different ways you can use them, use crystals and minerals in your workings and for yourself. It's incredible, the detail and the information that's in that book. That's honestly, guys, so many of Philip's books don't just rely on information about individual crystals. They also give you a lot more information than that. Now, as I said, that was the first book I bought, and that was right at the beginning of my personal journey, and it was amazing. So I then went on and I bought the Crystal Healer book, which was more about the healing side, which I don't really touch on. So when you do lots of crystal healing courses, don't you, Philip?
Yes, I teach crystal healing from a beginner's course right the way up to master teacher, all the way through every single step of the journey. The thing about the courses is they're really, really practical. It's really hands-on. There isn't a substitute for getting your hands into crystals and doing it, actually working with the energy, connecting with it, and experiencing it for yourself. And it's interesting that you mentioned the Crystal Healer, because that was the first book that I wrote. Mm-hmm. And recently, in actual fact, so recently it's actually tomorrow rather than today, the pocket edition of the book is coming out and is being released. So that's called The Little Pocket Book of Crystal Healing, which is the whole Crystal Healer, just reduced in size, really a handbag size rather than a pocket size. But it's really easy just to take around. The thing about that book and why I wrote it originally was because I was fed up with looking at crystal books that had really, really, really bad photographs. And you would either see, and you still do by and large today, and I'm not having to go at everyone else, there are some people with great books, but by and large, either the photographs in crystal books are of the most amazing crystals that you will ever see, and you will never afford, and you will never see in a shop.
Yes.
Or they're absolute rubbish that you can barely recognise. And my thing very much was, let's get some photographs out here of crystals which people can actually identify. And so we had 2 rules. One was every photograph had to be perfectly clear, and the other was every single crystal had to come out of regular stock. So there's nothing out of my personal collection in the book. And so what we're saying is that every single photograph in there should look more or less like something you could buy in any good crystal shop in the world. You don't have to go to the top-end sort of museum quality stuff, and you can recognise what it is. And then the other thing that happens in crystal books is they give you loads and loads and loads of information about single crystals, and sometimes tell you what to do with them and not. But they never link it back, very rarely link it back, to what you're looking for. Because when you're looking for something in a crystal book, in a healing book, the chances are you're looking to heal something specific. Mm-hmm. And so in the back of the book is a guide with 500 fairly common ailments, and they're split into physical, emotional, spiritual, lifestyle sections, where you can just look up an ailment and it will tell you what crystals to work with and exactly what to do with them. So it really is, as the book subtitle calls it, it's crystal prescriptions that will change your life forever. And they do, because it makes it so simple.
Oh, I completely agree with you. So I don't really work in the healing front. I do on a personal level for myself, but I don't work in the field, as it were. on a healing level. So for me, the emotional, mental and spiritual side is sort of where I sit with it all. But you are very much involved in the healing side of things, and putting that information out there for other people to work with in that way. Now, you've just spent the whole weekend doing the Crystal Healing Level 1 course, haven't you?
Yes, that's right. We're a brand new group of students who are absolutely fantastic, as almost everyone is who comes to do the class.
Do you get emotionally involved with people that come on your classes?
As little as possible. There are too many people coming in and out.
Oh, I can imagine. You see a lot of people.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, of course, there are some people who you notice more and you want to spend more time with on a personal level. Mm-hmm. But as far as the class goes, every single one is treated the same, and every single person gets the same from the class, which is everything they need to work as a crystal therapist. Some people come and they just want to learn for themselves, and maybe they just want to learn about crystals themselves, or they want to work on friends and family. Lots and lots more people now coming, and either they're already therapists doing another type of therapy and they want to add crystal healing to it, or they're starting from scratch and they want to be professional crystal therapists. And that's really an amazing place that it is. And some people now are just coming in, and you know the minute they walk in, they should be teaching this to other people. Mm-hmm. And that's very, very much what I love doing, is taking people right the way through, getting them to start teaching, and then they spread the word further. And I'm always want more people doing it. And I love it when anyone brings out a crystal book, because someone else is going to read it. And if you look at it from a business point of view, their book is free advertising for me. Oh, your radio show is free advertising for me. But continuously, everything everyone does in the crystal field is just, it's perfect. Just adds more. Everything I do helps everyone else.
Very much so. I say it's helped me an awful lot on my journey, even though I don't approach it from a healing point of view. You've taught me things without even realising you've taught me things through your books that I've been able to translate and transfer over into the fields that I work into. So the tools that you are putting out there are absolutely phenomenal, in my opinion. Now, we have a few people in the chat room. A lady called Jane S. Hanscombe. She's been on a few of your courses in her time.
She has. Hi, Jane. She was there this weekend, actually.
Oh, brilliant. And a lady called Bianca Malik, who is actually a personal friend of mine. She's coming onto a workshop with you in August.
That'd be lovely to see you, Bianca.
I believe that might be at the Crystal Tree in Leigh-on-Sea.
Ah, yes. Dear friends of mine, I'm there quite regularly running workshops and running my crystal courses.
I know. Now, we have a question in the chat room from Richard. Does Philip feel working with crystals is instinctive, or can it be learnt?
Both is the actual answer. I've been looking at that question for a few minutes, and it really is both. Instinctively, people can work with crystals, and there's lots and lots of information that can be learnt. So it really is a combination of the two. And I think that the learning process is ongoing. Okay. So working intuitively with crystals, great place to start. And I'm sure many, many people have heard, if you're drawn to a crystal, if the crystal's waving at you saying, hey, me, I want to come with you, you need that crystal. Mm-hmm. And don't worry about why you need it. You do.
No, I agree with you. Totally agree with you. And it could be and I've said this again myself before now, it could be the smallest, ugliest little crystal in the world. But for some reason, if you're drawn to that one, then that's the one you have, because that's the one that you need to work with for your unique energy signature.
What I'd also like to say, though, is I want to just change a word. And I do this with my students. And I really just want to change one word. And it's not crystals you're drawn to or crystals you like, but crystals you notice. Oh. And it's the crystals that you hate, the ones that you pick up and you can't hold them for a minute because they make you feel really creepy, the ones that you pick up and they make you feel nauseous, the ones that you can't even touch. Those are the ones which are touching something deep down inside you that you do not want to even look at. And they're the ones that will change your life.
Okay. I've not seen it in that way before.
Be brave and go for them, it's not a pleasant journey, but in a very short period of time, and by short, I really mean short. For some people, it's minutes. It's never more than a couple of weeks if you pursue with it, and you end up just feeling better, and your life changes and things shift, and you let go of stuff that you never knew that you were holding on to, and you never even knew it because you've pushed it down so far for so long that you've forgotten it's there. You don't know what it is, but it goes, and when it's cleared, you're like a new person.
That's really interesting to me, because I've always felt when I've worked with crystals myself that it's just that initial, for me, it's always that's the one I need, that's the one I need. You know, regardless of how that's made me feel, I know that that's the one I personally need. So I haven't really diluted that down to, oh, it's made me feel nauseous or sick or good, or so that initial impact of that crystal that's the one. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So I hadn't diluted that down to that level, I suppose. Oh, it's making me feel like this. It's just initial impact. That's the one I need. And like I say, you could walk into a room full of amethyst and it's that initial impact. And that's where you know that that's the one you need. Yeah,
and there's one crystal somewhere in there.
Yeah, if that's the crystal you need at that time, of course. Now, going on, you mentioned the little pocketbook of crystal healing. Now, I have been incredibly blessed to have been given a copy of this book, and again, it's phenomenal. It's full of information and individual crystals in there. Like you've said, your pictures are absolutely beautiful. And we come from a very similar place in regards to not just keeping stock. You use your stock as well in your day-to-day work. And, you bring it out and you take it to your courses, don't you? And you do your grids with them.
Yes. Crystal grids. That's the next book, actually. And you do crystal grids as well.
I do. I do like my crystal grids.
Yes,
I find them incredibly empowering.
You did a lovely one for tonight, didn't you?
Yeah, because it's a full moon tonight.
Yeah, and I did one for tonight, but for different reasons.
Okay. Do you want to tell me your reasons for doing your grid?
Mine was actually for focusing really on this interview and talking to you and sort of getting my head out of the day, getting my head out of teaching other people and just talking. So I'll talk you through it if you like. You've got a photograph.
Please do. Yeah, I have a photograph, which I can't share photographs into the chat room. However, I will put it onto my Spirited Crystals page after the show tonight. So if you go and have a look on it's Spirited Crystals, it's on Facebook, and I will share the grid that Philip has done for tonight on there, so you can get to have a look at it. But Philip, please go ahead and please talk me through that grid.
Okay, in the centre of it is an emerald crystal, and the emerald crystal is really focused just on the heart. So everything's coming from the heart, and the thoughts of anything coming through the mind are filtered through the heart rather than the other way around. So the important thing is the message as opposed to anything else. Then on the left, sort of in a westerly position, there's a carnelian crystal, which is just a boost of energy. And in the south, there's a phantom quartz crystal. The phantom quartz is really there to help notice things which aren't obvious. In the east, there's a citrine crystal. And the citrine crystal is for positivity and creativity and abundance. And in the north, there's a banded amethyst crystal, which is for a connection to spirit, right? And then in between those, in between each direction, in the what would be northwest, there's a watermelon tourmaline for protection. And there's a clear, very, very clear amethyst crystal in the southwest, which again is for connection, but it's connection to the earth and the earth spirits. And in the southeast, there is a Mauryan quartz crystal, which is absolutely clear, a laser crystal, and that's for absolute clarity and focus. And in the northeast, there is another citrine crystal, which is a nod to how I got into crystals. Citrine is one of those wonderful crystals for the gut. And that was basically the problems with the gut is how I got in.
Yeah.
So that's the whole combination.
And it's absolutely stunning. I mean, the crystals you use are absolutely beautiful. They are fantastic. And the photographs are absolutely mind-blowing. So, well, I'm a crystal girl, so, I'm going to think that. But trust me, they are amazing.
I'm going to throw in another plug now, because on October the 17th, my book, The Book of Crystal Grids, comes out. It's on advanced sales now on my website, which we'll plug as well, which is thecrystalhealer.co.uk, and also Amazon and everywhere else in the English-speaking world. So any good bookshop, any crystal shop, any New Age shop, really, anywhere online that sells books, you can just order it. You should be able to order it now for delivery on October the 17th when it comes out.
I'm really looking forward to having a look at that book, because, as I say, I work with crystal grids quite extensively. In my day-to-day life, I find that that's where I work the best for me. And I can't wait, because I always like to see other people who work with crystals and work particularly crystal gridding, because I find them so empowering. So can you just give me a little brief overview of how you view a crystal grid?
Crystal grid basically gives you an opportunity to create a team to work together. And that team working together often does much more than a single crystal can do. And it gives you a psychological helping point, like a stepping stone, or actually a leaping stone, I'd say, especially when you've got a situation that there is nothing you think you can do about it. It empowers you to do something. And then you get the energy and the magic of crystals. And on top of that, that's combined with your intent and your focus, which the crystal grid, the whole process of creating the crystal grid, helps you to focus on whatever the issue is that you're looking at. And it doesn't matter what you want to do, almost anything that you can imagine a crystal grid could help with.
Summed up beautifully.
Thank you.
I couldn't have said it better myself. They're incredibly empowering for not just a personal, but also for getting that message out there to the universe to open those opportunities up, working with the energy of crystals and with the energy of yourself and with the energy of the universe within parameters of sacred geometry.
Yes. The thing it allows you to do as well is to change how the universe is listening to you. It's like it allows you to knock on the universe's door and say, hey, this is what I meant to happen. Can you help me with it? And when you do, the universe tends to listen.
It certainly does. In ways unexpected, I would just like to point out.
Yes, it can be. And there's always that message to remember, be careful what you ask for, because you might get it.
That is very, very, I was just about to say that myself, actually. Your intention when you build your grids and you put them out there is incredibly important. So make sure that you're very focused on your intention and it is really what you want, because like Philip has just said, be careful what you wish for. I think we've all been caught by that one, haven't we, Philip?
In the book, I've sort of approached it in two ways. So there's part of the book has got the sort of prescriptive way that you can create this grid to create this specific intention. And the other part of it is completely freeform. So it guides you through a process that you can actually create a grid for anything from any crystals that you have. And that's the really, really, really empowering part, because it allows you to do it yourself. And that's what I try to do with all of my teaching, is everything is empowering people to do it. I don't like saying, you have to do this. It's, you can do this, and this is a way that you could do it. And this is another way you could do it. And that's another way you could do it. And giving people options, because to say, oh, you know, you have to have 10 tanzanite crystals and 14 emeralds and 17 rubies and 4 diamonds in this crystal grid for it to work. It's really nice, but how many people can afford that?
I agree. No, I totally agree with you. I've always said that one of the best teachers is the way that shows you how to do it, but you're the one that learns how to do it.
Yes, but it's got to be practical with crystals.
Very much so.
Showing people how to do it is the key. Yes, and then empowering people to get on and do it themselves.
Very much so. Now, at this point, we need to take a quick break. So bear with us, guys. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this.
Hello, Harry Price here. Good evening. If there's nothing myself and everybody else enjoy here on the other side more is the sit back and relax and listen to Parasearch Radio with its paranormal news, views and reviews from across the UK and beyond. Make sure to find out more about them on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web, whatever they are, to keep up to date with all their broadcasts throughout the week. And I hope you enjoy them as much as we do over here. Hello? Is anybody there?
Welcome back to the Spirit Dimension. Tonight I'm joined by the amazing Philip Permutt, and we're talking all things crystal in the crystal world. Now, before the break, we touched on crystal gridding and how you don't have to have some of the high intensity crystals, high vibrational crystals that you need necessarily for the crystal grids. We're just showing you the way forward, and you take those ideas and move them forward yourself. Now, I'd like to move on a little bit, because there's another thing you do every year that I'm so jealous of, I can't deny. Do you go to the Tucson Gem Show?
Yes, it's actually an unbelievable experience. Very, very, very hard work. Joyously hot and sunny in February, which is the only reason why we go. Nothing to do with crystals whatsoever. No, that's a joke, just in case anyone didn't realise. But it is amazing. It's amazing, and it's not like anything that's available, not only in this country, but not available in Europe, or actually not available anywhere else in the whole world, because instead of there being a gem show, which is a bit of a misnomer there, this year there were 45 shows in the same town at the same time. The smallest ones are about the size of the largest shows in the UK. The largest ones have, I think, a couple of thousand exhibitors in each, and there are half a dozen of those. And it is just amazing, because you can get everything that is available on the planet, literally, and anything that's turned up here from space as well. That's also available. So meteorites and moldivites and tektites and those sorts of things. One year, someone was selling bits of Mars, actually, which apparently had been came from a meteorite which bounced off Mars. So just literally anything at all that's ever come to this planet is available there. And the range of people that you get is quite phenomenal. One year, I remember just sort of sitting, having a cup of coffee, and within seconds there were two people totally unrelated on phone calls. One of them was a dear lady who was speaking, I think, to her husband and apologising that she'd overspent by $12. And the other phone call was a guy who was really ecstatic because he'd managed to buy this Tyrannosaurus Rex skull for $1 million. And these two conversations are within seconds of each other, and this is what Tucson's like. It's literally everything at every level all the time. You can't get around all the shows. Someone once worked out if you spent 5 minutes at every stand, you didn't stop to buy anything, you didn't eat or sleep or go to the loo or anything else for 2 weeks, which is how long the shows are on for, then you wouldn't have a hope of actually seeing everything.
My goodness. So how do you dilute it down to what you need to do?
Some of the shows we go to regularly because we know people very well, so we've been going there for 18 years. So some people we're buying from the whole time. And other shows we think just almost randomly sometimes, let's go to this one this year and see what it's like. There are some shows we've never been to. In actual fact, until last year, I'd never been to the official Tucson Gem and Mineral show in all the years that I'd been going. And the reason for that is it's very much a public show, and it's that one where there are museums exhibiting and all of the top-end collector materials there. But it's already been shown at other shows all the way around. And the Tucson Gem and Mineral show is actually only on for 4 days. And we're usually packing pallets at that time and flying home. So this year we stayed a bit longer, and so we managed to take in the show. But it's the first time that was in 18 years that I've actually visited it, which is a bit weird.
Well, yeah. I would have thought that would have been the main one. But having never been, it's very hard to understand the scale of the Tucson Gem show. In all honesty, I've watched videos and stuff of people that have been. You just can't get an idea of what it's really like from those, can you?
No, there are shows in exhibition centres of the size of sort of Olympia or Earl's Court. Mm-hmm. There are shows in tents in the desert, in hotels and motels, in just anywhere. There are guys at the side of the road who've got nothing to do with the shows whatsoever, who are just selling whatever they've been digging out of the dirt in Mexico. Just unbelievably anything from anywhere.
So do you go with a list of what you're looking for, or are you just drawn instinctually around to see what's available and, what catches your eye, basically?
You go with a list and you ignore it.
That sounds like my usual shopping trip.
There are always things that I know that perhaps we've stocked regularly for years, we've sold out of, which need replacing. Mm-hmm. There are always some new things, because there are always new discoveries every year which are released at Tucson. And that's the place that people release their new finds. Mm. Sometimes they're not really very commercial, because there's a very limited supply, and they might be very, very tiny crystals, very, very specialist things. Every museum in the world's going to buy them, and no one else, a few collectors maybe. But they're not really suitable for working with for healing, because they're just not practical to handle. Okay. And then there are other things which might be poisonous or radioactive or whatever that you really don't want to get too involved with. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, this year we found an amazing stone which had just been found, and it's a botryoidal black-banded agate. And it comes from a place called Medicine Bow in Wyoming, which is a sacred Native American ground. And the stones actually bubble up through the mantle in hot spring lakes and solidify as they come up. So they're almost live, fresh magma, which has just solidified. Wow. And they're really the newest crystals around. But they come from this very, very old material, billions of years old magma, but just coming to the surface now. And there's an amazing thing with them, because the guy who had them, he gifted myself and my wife a couple of pieces and just said, tell him what we feel of them. And we both said completely different things. And he said, every single person has said something different. Oh. And it's quite an incredible thing, because the crystal just seems to go where you need it. So every single person has a unique experience with it. And one of the things, we haven't got lots and lots of it, so we are actually taking it to our advanced crystal workshops, which they're coming up now in August in the Crystal Treely-on-Sea, and up in the Medicine Garden in Ulverston in Cumbria, and then in St Albans in December. But that's about all the stock we've got, unless we can get some from him again next year. But it is just something that is out of the world. And I've noticed out of the world sort of comments, Richard's saying, have I ever used any meteorite or other extraterrestrials materials in my work? Yes, I love moldavite. Moldavite is this amazing material. It only comes from the Czech Republic. It's very, very unique. Mm-hmm. And what happened was that a meteorite came in and it exploded just above the Earth's surface, really just above it. And the meteorite was completely destroyed, but at the same time it melted the Earth's surface. And what moldavite is actually a remelding of the meteoritic material, the space material, and Earth material into one thing. And the feeling of it is really fantastic. Some people get very, very, very spacey and floaty with it, but it's a very, very deep, heart-centered healing crystal. And meteorites, I like working with meteorites as well for some very specific things. Actually, I've got a meteorite-faced watch, which was just a fun thing picked up along the way. But I like saying that it's 6 billion years old and keeps perfect time, which is nice.
Oh, my goodness. How do you wear that?
Oh, it's great, actually. It just gives you a bit of a buzz. It's shield. The whole meteorite it's the face of it's a meteorite, polished meteorite, and it's shielded in a titanium metal box, basically, which is the watch. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, sounds amazing. Now, I agree with you with moldavite. It can literally take you out of this world if you work with it, and you're not used to working with crystals. It can give you quite a headache at times, but it's definitely one to work with because it has a completely different energy to other crystals that are earthbound crystals that you can work with. So it's definitely one to watch it out for. And make sure you buy the real stuff as well, because there's a lot of fake out there, isn't there?
Oh, there is. It's always a pity, and it's always a problem, because a lot of crystals are faked, and there's no need to fake them because they are readily available and they're not expensive. Moldavite is it's readily available and it is quite expensive, but small pieces are not restrictive, really.
No, I agree.
You normally pick something up for sort of £15 or so, that sort of price, £20. Mm-hmm. So you're not talking a fortune.
No, that's one thing I have noticed, and that's one thing I started when I was first setting up my business, was basically to make it affordable for people, to make it more accessible to people, and layman term it, because some books and things out there are incredibly well worded, and if you're not that kind of mind, it can be a little overwhelming. And that's something you do with your books as well, is you bring it down to a level that's really easily understood and makes it accessible to people. And that's incredibly important.
Thank you. I do try to write them in English, and this is a joyous thing I have continuously with my publishers, which is this book's in English and it's going to be understood in English, nice and plain and simple, so everyone can read it. And I think that there are people who try to be a bit too clever.
Yes.
And in doing so, they sort of restrict the understanding of it. And that's a problem. They're writing for people who know what they know, mm-hmm. rather than writing for people who don't know what they know.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, as I say, that's one thing I started off in the field when I first started working with crystals, was I wanted to make it more accessible and, layman term it almost. So you don't have to have a degree education to understand these, concepts because they can be quite complicated concepts that we deal with, can't they?
Yes, completely. The idea of linking, if you look at the sort of physics and the quantum physics behind some of the things that happen in the crystal world, and also in the sort of psychic research world, the whole concept of what they're calling dark matter or dark energy, I believe, is where the answer's going to come from, but they're not there now. And we just don't understand enough about it. But I was reading recently about a site that they saw actually in outer space through telescopes, where they actually saw dark matter. I mean, we're talking sort of millions of light years away. But they saw dark matter interacting with physical matter that we can all see. Yeah. They went through each other without any change whatsoever to either of them.
Yeah.
And that starts to explain all sorts of possibilities of healing. It explains all sorts of possibilities of psychic stuff, spirits appearing, walking through walls. All of these sorts of things can all be explained with an understanding, or with a greater understanding than we have now, perhaps, of dark matter and dark energy.
I understand where you're coming from with that. It's a brand new field, effectively, quantum physics, and the way entanglement happens, and it's very, very much being looked at in the scientific field at this matter in time, and there's a lot of unexplained theories and concepts being bandied about at the moment, but there's no proof to back them up at the moment. But the more understanding we get, and the more we work with things like crystals and minerals and that kind of thing, we're sort of making steps forward. Small steps, tiny incy-wincy steps, but they're all integral to each other.
Yes, it really is step by step, like stepping stones, one to another. And different fields all cross over and come together as well. How things work. And there was a lovely bit of research that was done a few years ago. Every now and again, so I'll drop into the science stuff just because that's where it came from originally. And every now and again, you get a bit of research that comes from a totally different angle. And there was one which was from quantum physicists. And the quantum physicists were studying a hospital in America. And in this hospital, they looked at one ward, a cardiac ward. They named each of the beds, they numbered each of the beds, and then randomly selected half of the beds that wouldn't have any healing at all, and the other half of the beds would have healing from anyone who would send them healing. And then a number was sent. It was around San Francisco, of course, but it was a number was sent to different healing groups and people all the way around who'd agreed to take part in it. And there were crystal healers, there were nuns, there were psychics, there were Reiki healers, all sorts of people, shaman, Native American healers, all different people were part of this. And what they discovered very quickly was that all of the beds, they actually use the word of people being prayed for, but it's basically just sending healing. And every single bed that someone was being sent healing did so much better in their recovery. And the nurses on the ward, they were told nothing about it other than the experiment was happening, but not which beds were being healed and which ones weren't. But they realised after about 2 months of this year thing that they did, exactly which beds were being healed and which ones weren't, because not one person died after heart surgery in a bed that healing was being sent to.
And that just shows you the power of what you can send out there and what you can transmit out into the ethos, regardless of whether or not you're present at that point in time or you're there just sending it out.
Yeah, and this happened over an entire year, and in the other beds that no one was sending healing to, or not specifically, the same sort of numbers of people died that they would expect to die after heart surgery. And the same sort of numbers of secondary infections would happen and those sorts of things. And they just found that secondary infections were almost at a zero rate. Absolutely no one died in a bed that was being sent healing for a year.
It's astonishing the power that you can have, the power that you have that people don't utilise on a day-to-day basis. And that's, from my personal perspective, that's what I want to put out there, is that you have this power with the tools. You can really transmit that and use that energy to put out there what you want to put out there. Me personally, I use crystals, as does Philip. But Reiki, I would like to talk to you a little bit about Reiki, because I feel the natural progression from Reiki is crystal healing. It takes that into the next level. How do you feel about that?
I think they're parallel. I think I'm a Reiki master as well, so I like Reiki. And one of the joys about Reiki is once that you have it and you're attuned to it, it's just going to flow. So every time you think about healing, it will flow. Doesn't matter what type of healing you do, doesn't matter what else you do, the Reiki energy will flow. And that's great, but I think that crystals just allow you to amplify that and focus it more. And I love crystals. That's what works for me.
Yeah. That works for me too. Now, one other thing I would like to talk to you about is you supply crystals and minerals to the movie world, don't you? It's a very relevant thing at the moment because Game of Thrones is coming up for its next series. So talk to me a little bit how that happened for you.
I haven't done Game of Thrones.
Oh, I thought you had.
No, Game of Thrones is one I haven't done. I've done lots and lots of others, but not that one, no. The first one, or actually, no, it started a long time ago when I had a shop in the High Street in St Albans. And because it's near Boreham Wood Studios and lots of TV stuff happens there, people started to find us. And when people wanted crystals, and they're sort of quite a specialist thing, they used to come in and we just supply them with crystals for whatever it was, TV show or movie, usually at Elstree Studios. And then that just sort of spread further and further. And now I think that we sort of supply probably about 75% of all of the crystals that are used in UK-based movies. Less so TV now, but even things years ago, like when there was Mystic Meg in whichever tabloid she was in, which I can't remember now, but her crystal balls all came from us, and things like that. The two big crystal balls in Harry Potter, they were mine. It's just lots and lots of things. The last one that we did was the new Mummy film with what's the megastar's name who's in it? Someone tell me. Thank you. And the other one, the Australian guy who
Hugh
was
Jackman?
in... No. He was in Gladiator.
Oh, Russell.
Yeah.
Can't remember his last name, but Russell, yeah.
Yeah. Those two. And there's some amazing scenes in there with crystals. And then there are lots of all the Disney films which are shot here. They use crystals in the most magnificent ways. So there's one in Maleficent, however one pronounces it. Yeah. There's pre-Snow White story. And in that one, they used quite a lot of angel aura crystals, but instead of having them in the normal size they are of a few inches, they were actually blown up with CGI, so that they were the land that the actors were acting on.
Oh my goodness, how amazing. It's actually Russell Crowe. Thank you guys in the chat room for filling in the last name for me. We got the first name, Philip. That's good enough in my view.
Is he from New Zealand? Oh, Antipodes is all fine anywhere around there.
It's down that way, it's south. Now, one other thing I wanted to talk to you about was Lemurian quartz crystals.
Yes, love them.
One of the first times you came across this was actually at the Gem Show, wasn't it?
Yes.
And you noticed that... Sorry, carry on.
The first time really came across them was actually discovering the old Russian Lemurian crystals, which were one of the first lots that were found in the Ural Mountains in Russia. And that was a completely bizarre experience because they didn't look particularly bright or wonderful, but they just had an energy that you couldn't avoid and couldn't put them down. You just pick them up and they just stuck in your hand and wouldn't go away. And as I was walking around this stand, one after another, was literally shouting and screaming, catching the sunlight and shining away for a moment and just saying, me, I want to come. But not only that, they were actually saying who they wanted to come, which customer in England they wanted to go to. Mm-hmm. And we bought about 40 of them for specific people. No one in England knew about this at all at the time. I bought about 40 of them for specific people, and these crystals were really quite magnificent. They were discovered, the pocket they were in was discovered the day after the 9/11 event in New York City. And their healing energy on a global scale was quite phenomenal. And there was one crystal in particular that I really, really wanted to get, and it said to me in absolutely clear language, the clearest language I've ever heard, that it wanted to fly. And we were flying back to England a few days later, and I thought, yes, that crystal wants to come with us. And I picked it up, and the moment I picked it up, it just went completely dull. And I put it down, and it started shining again, saying, I want to fly. And I picked it up, it went completely dull. And I thought, I don't know about this, I'm going to leave it. I left it. A couple of days later, just before we flew home, we went back to the guy and just said, what's happened with that crystal? He said it was bought by a pilot, and he's going to keep it in his pilot's bag, and he's taking it around the world with him.
Oh, my goodness.
And that's really what those crystals were. They're phenomenal, unbelievable. We bought I think it was about 40 of them in the end. Most of them were for specific people. And when we came back, we just said, there's a crystal for you. If you don't want it, that's fine, but have a look at it. And every single person we bought them for, just the specific crystal for them, they bought. Mm-hmm. And there were a few others that weren't specific for anyone, and they just went instantly as well to people that we didn't know. Incredible. But the Mauryan crystals I love them. They're like that the whole time. And the ones that I really like at the moment are some Colombian crystals that I've been working with a lot. And there are some specific blue mist Colombian crystals which have an inner healing. And they're a bit weird in how they're formed. Are we running out of time?
No, carry on, please, carry on. Okay. There's too much interest for me to cut the show at this point, so you carry on, please.
A weird bit of geology of how they're formed, because they were formed about 110 million years ago in Colombia. It's when they started growing. And there was about a 10 or 15 million year period, about 60 million years ago, where the Earth went through a load of massive upheavals, sort of earthquakes and tectonic plate movements, and the inside of these crystals was fractured. The outside of them stayed perfectly okay, but the inside fractured, and then the inside healed. And what you see with them is inside the crystal there's a sort of blue mist. And that blue mist is where the crystals heals itself internally. And they're absolutely fantastic for working with for self-healing and looking within yourself and finding the bits inside you. They're, very, very, very special crystals.
I think I need one of those at the moment. I'm just putting that out there. I might have to indulge myself on my crystal for my personal collection. Now, the other tool that I use on a regular basis is the Crystal Tarot. It's one of my favourite crystal decks. It came to me from a friend who bought it at one of your workshops, funnily enough. And then she showed it to me. I loved it. And she actually bought it for me as a gift because she knew how much I loved her deck. So little shout out to Yvette Peck. Thank you so much for buying that for me. Because now I use this deck on a very, very personal level. And I do my guidance grid for the full moon, which, again, on Spirited Crystals, you can see tonight's full moon ritual that I do for a personal guidance reading. And I do a crystal grid, and I use the Crystal Tarot deck. And I love this deck. I think it is one of the most personal decks you can use, personally speaking. That's a personal factor. And I love it. So I wanted to ask you, how did this evolve for you? Because tarot is incredibly hard concepts sometimes to grasp when you're working with tarot. How did that start for you?
I've always, really from day one, worked with crystals in a crystal divination system. So each crystal has a meaning which changes from time to time, but in exactly the same way that a tarot card has a basic meaning, and then its interpretation changes depending on what other cards are there, what the subject is, the time of day, what the weather's like, and everything else, which they do, and what mood you're in. Crystals do the same thing. And so actually linking them and tying them together was quite straightforward, because certain crystals relate very, very strongly to certain tarot cards. Yes. Some of them were very, very easy to do, like, for example, picking rose quartz for the lovers. But the lovers could have had a dozen different crystals. True. And that's the really, really big problem. But then other cards, like the death card, that could only have crocoite as the crystal. There's not another crystal that works for the sort of really, really big changes in life like that one does. And so some of them are really, really straightforward, and some a little bit more work, but it's very, very, well, for me, it was very easy to do. I used to read tarot cards the whole time. I used to do crystal divination the whole time. It's simple. But having said that, once it's produced and they're linked together, it gives you a very, very positive way of working with crystals, and a very positive way of working with tarot at the same time. It's a very light deck that's always looking for a positive answer to something rather than saying life's dreadful.
No, I completely agree. I say it's one of my favourite decks to use. Sorry, my dog is having a moment.
All right.
No, it's one of my favourite decks to use on a very, very personal level, as much as using it for the guidance grid and monthly full moon that I do. So I thought I'd bring that up because I love this deck. So if you haven't invested in this deck, the Crystal Tarot is one I would personally recommend you invest in, because it brings those two concepts together in a way that I haven't found other decks do. Although if you do your research, you'll find that other tarot decks, general tarot decks, do relate to crystals. This one brings it onto a lot more personal level. Particularly if you work with crystals, it brings those two concepts together in a very, very personal way. I love it. Thank you for making that, because that for me was just amazing. And the minute I got it, I got a kick off of the deck, even though it was a brand new deck. It was absolutely astonishing. So thank you for doing that. That was astonishing.
Very, very welcome. I'm actually doing a Crystal Tarot workshop at the Crystal Tree in Leigh-on-Sea in August.
Fantastic. Now, the Crystal Tree is a shop in Leigh-on-Sea in Essex. If you don't know it, I suggest you look it up. It's an amazing shop. It's run by two amazing ladies, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
And Philip does quite a lot of workshops there as well.
Sorry, I was just saying Tracy and Louise.
Tracy and Louise, sorry, I always forget Louise for some reason. I don't know why. But I've met Tracy, so that could be why I forget Louise, if you know what I mean, psychologically. Go there for any of the courses. Philip runs courses in lots of different places, but the Crystal Tree is nearest to me, so that's how come I know about that one more than any others, because a lot of my clients come to your courses there.
Ah, that's nice. Yes.
Yeah, it's lovely. They go, I'm doing Philip's course. They get really excited.
You get gifts of crystal tarots, which are really nice.
Which is fantastic. So that's how my friend, Yvette Peck, she first got her deck from doing that course with you, and obviously getting the deck through that. She came straight to mine, and it was like, oh my God, it was amazing. Look at this deck. And I was like, because I've read tarot for quite a long time before I got into crystals. And well, as I say, I got a kick off it straight away, and I was like, I've got to get it. I've got to get that deck. And she actually bought it for me because I was so enthusiastic about it. So, and now I use it. I don't use it for my readings that I do for other people, but I use it and put it out publicly for my full moon readings. on spirited crystals, and also I use it for my personal use, and is the one that sings to my soul the most out of all the decks that I work with. Now we've got Caitlin, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your surname. She says it's a really nice deck to work with. She loves it too. Gavin Dow is in the chat room. He said he's bought a Lemurian laser from Philip, wears it all the time. It's a gorgeous piece. So he thanks you for your friendship and your example to the crystal world. I know several of my clients that come to me who end up being friends with me. One of them is Bianca. She is in the chat room. She adores you. She's going on one of your courses in August. It's just amazing the impact you have had on the crystal world. And I would like to thank you as a crystal seller for helping to inspire me on my personal journey with crystals. And thank you so much for joining me tonight. You're going to come back in October and talk to me all about your new crystal gridding book, aren't you?
Yes, I am. We already have a date, I believe.
We do.
Yes, definitely in October.
In October.
Yeah, but in the meantime, there's the little pocketbook of crystal healing, which I just thought I'd mention again, which is released tomorrow. So yeah, available everywhere. Grab a copy.
Definitely grab a copy. As I've had a pre-copy of this, I've done a little review for people, which is on my website. It covers so much stuff. It's absolutely beautiful. And thank you for sending me a preview copy of it, because I love a book. I do love a book. You're mine forever now, Philip, because you sent me a book. That's all I can say on that one. It is amazing. It's great if you're travelling, because you can pop it in your backpack or whatever and take it with you, better than some of the other books that are out there. Thank you so much, Philip, for joining me tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure and a blessing to have you with me.
Thank you.
Can you just reiterate where they can find you? Not that people need to, but just reiterate it where the people can find you. It's
www.thecrystalhealer.co.uk. That's co.uk for our American listeners. We do ship all over the world, and happy to have visitors at the showroom in St Albans. Just contact us, make an appointment, come over.
And your next workshop that's available?
The next workshop that's available for the Crystal Healing Level 1 is September the 9th and 10th, I think, in St Albans, or the 2nd and 3rd weekend in Leigh-on-Sea, also in September. And there might be some dates in Ireland at the end of August. But I also run a Crystal New Moon meditation workshop on the new moon rather than the full moon, almost every month, and the next one is on, I think it's Sunday the 23rd of July in St Albans.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me. All the links have been shared in the chat room, or contact Philip via Facebook or Twitter if you're not sure of any of the places you can find out this information. He is very accessible. Or contact Parasearch Radio. We can put you in touch with Philip as well. Thank you again, Philip, for joining me tonight. I will definitely be talking to you again very, very shortly, I'm sure.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
I'm going to be sharing the grid we spoke about earlier in my group, Spirited Crystals, so you can all have a look at that. Now, don't forget, Parasearch has shows out every single night of the week, covering all sorts of subjects, from the unexplained paranormal, conspiracy theory, ufology, all sorts of things we cover on Parasearch Radio. If there's anything you would like us to discuss, then please get in touch with us. It's Parasearch Radio on Facebook or via our website. And on that note, thank you so much again, Philip. I'm absolutely starstruck. As I am starstruck, I'm not going to lie. And I bid you all a very, very farewell. Good night, everybody.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.